So before we start, I'd just like to say a big thank you to our sponsors, OII and Cassidy. I think we had a great session yesterday. Hopefully it'll continue today. So today we're here to talk about extracting value with AI implementation. And before I do that, I'd like to introduce my esteemed panel. Sorry for the way we're set up. It's quite awkward. But so we have Peter Verster here on my left. Peter has held roles including Director of Technology and Global Director of Digital Strategy at leading names such as Adidas, Tesco, and AstraZeneca, where he has a track record of solving business challenges through strategic technology application and dynamic capability enhancement. He is now a founder and partner of Northell, one of our sponsors here today. And Northell use intelligence and data solutions to connect ecosystems, drive growth, and business value. I should add that Peter has also got a book coming out in January next year called AI for Business, which is really a practical guide to extract value. Next to Peter, we have Claudia Quinonez. Claudia is the global head of the News Innovation Lab at Bloomberg, which includes news automation, intelligence tools, and Gen AI for Bloomberg Newsroom. With a career that spans over 2 decades at Bloomberg, Claudia has extensive experience working at the intersection of journalism, technology, and product development. And next to Claudia, we have Oumar Diallo. Oumar is the founder and CEO of Aeon Investments, a research-driven investment management company. Prior to this role, he has used his expertise in the credit space to found and manage an investment advisory business, established an alternative investment advisory desk, and worked as global head of mutual fund derivatives trading at Deutsche Bank. And we have next to Oumar, Derek Tufford. Derek has held senior management positions in strategy, digital, analytics, growth, and innovation, and now consults with clients to transform their loyalty offering and CRM strategy. He is a mastermind of personalization. I liked that one. having optimized loyalty programs for dozens of businesses around the globe, such as McDonald's, Shell, Marriott, KLM, and United Airlines. And my name is Adekunle. I am a senior transformation and change leader with over 20 years of experience within the pharmaceutical and regulation industry. I've had many positions abroad, and I'm now working with companies to help them understand the value they can get out of AI through technology and regulation. Thank you. I should also add that 4 of us here are alumni of Oxford University, so that's how we kind of became connected, and feel very privileged to be part of this academic centre. So as you can see from our panelists today, we have a lot of industry and sector experience. Unlike yesterday, which was focused pretty much on the philosophical kind of risks and responsible AI and everything else, in this session we're going to talk about real business problems and give examples of how we can kind of address those through various strategies and insights. Just to set the scene, so for the next, I'll say 40 minutes or so, we're going to delve into the following themes. The first one is really around expectation settings and impact on AI on businesses. The second is organizational readiness. The third is what businesses need to do to get started and prioritized, challenges and barriers that businesses tend to experience. And finally, we'll end with leadership and kind of building consensus and gaining buy-in. Okay? So let's start with the first question around expectation settings. So as an organization about to start its AI journey, or its enterprise-wide AI journey, what would you suggest are reasonable expectations? And Peter, I'll start with you. Considering your work with many companies beginning their AI enterprise journey, can you share what's been your experience regarding these expectations?
Thank you. Good morning, and thanks for making it. I'm surprised I'm here because we won the rugby last night, so I'm impressed with myself. I think expectation, it's fair to say we're at the height of inflated expectations. And the reason I say that is that the recent developments in AI, specifically putting a UI on it, seems to have really captured the public imagination. And it's quite obvious what it is. Like things like ChatGPT and Midjourney and these kind of gen tools make personal productivity and creativity super accessible. The challenge with that is actually that doesn't translate to organizations. And I use 2 concepts to normally explain this, which is there's value potential. So these technologies really have massive value potential. That is true. In organizations, it's very different to articulate the net realized value because you have to do so much more to actually get that value extracted. So at an individual level, it's fairly intuitive, it's fairly easy. You know, I pay $20 a month, I get ChatGPT, I become more productive, I use Diallo, I generate images, it's super intuitive, it's super easy. I think at the organizational level, there's for me this kind of two challenges, which is less intuitive, what needs to change in the organization. And so there's this idea of expectation overflow. Because it's easy personally, it's easy in the organization. And so the challenges you typically see is that the investments aren't proportionate to what the change needs to be, and so they typically become underinvested when people go into organizations to try and make those changes. Other organizational challenges for me includes like how to articulate the net realized value, because all of a sudden you're working with stakeholders, you're not working with yourself, it's not individual, it's not a conversation, you have to manage a number of people. And then also, it has to do with actually changing processes and upskilling people and building technology within existing technology infrastructure. So those things are super complex when you combine all those together. So I think it's just the idea that it's simple individually and people take that and can't translate that into what it means for an organization. And I think that's a real challenge. And so what I do mostly is educate around what the other things are to make this work and actually how to extract value, the net realized value as opposed to value potential.
Thanks, Peter. This can be awkward with the mic, so please excuse us for that. Claudia, I'm going to go to you just because you're next to Peter. You've witnessed the growth in capabilities and evolution of different types of AI. Should expectations be shaped by the type of AI, given your experience in the newsroom?
Thank you. I believe so. So we have a news innovation lab, and I'm going to talk about in the context of the lab, which is obviously great place for experimentation and understanding how to go about your development. But one thing before that is it's very important for any organization, any group, any lab to first think of what's your problem, because there's so many different technologies within the AI umbrella. So it's not a simple thing. And we tend to put it all in one magic solution that will do it all, and it's not. And sometimes you would be surprised how simple techniques can actually address your problem, and also that is an impact on the cost. Because obviously if you go to large language models, the word large indicate that it is very hard on compute, on processes, and you need to be mindful and aware of that. So I read some story the other day that says, well, it's just like having this super fancy big car to deliver a pizza. So you have to have the right technology to the right problem. I think that is problem number one in setting the expectations. Do I know my problem? Do I know my technology? Do I have the talents that I require to be able to address this technology? Do I understand the implications of the technology that I choose to address this problem? So those are kind of very straightforward things, if you will, like almost a checklist. The other thing in the other dimension, which I think is really important, and we talked about yesterday on and off, but it's about understanding your data. So what, do you have the data? How is the data prepared and processed? Do you understand, once you put it through a modification process, which is what AI normally tends to be, so you get a data set, you put through a technology, it transforms this data, and you have an output. Do you understand how your data will reflect in the output? And are you prepared to tweak and go back to the data if you need, redo your data set, figure out how to best have it for your outcome. So I think those are expectations that business should have in mind. And it's very straightforward when you have a process to do so.
Thank you. I'm not going to take it back because I want to hand it over to Derek. Can you hear me? There you go. Sorry, Derek. So just considering your learning experiences, do you have anything you'd like to add in terms of expectations?
Yeah, sure. A few things. So the biggest challenge I see when I talk to CEOs or board of directors is managing, first of all, shareholder expectation when it comes to AI, because it's off the chart. They want that boost in the share price. But the reality is, what can you do in 3 and 6 months that's actually going to help you with your bottom line? And that's where the biggest challenge is. And it goes to a lot of things that the panelists have been saying around organizational capability and readiness. In most places, this is a 3 to 5 year journey to get the true value out of it. So the question really becomes which of the departments you get the maximum amount of value. And so what we'll see in some of the marketing places, it's easy for them to get 2 or 3 or 4% growth if they want to do it that way. Edge cases are a lot of places where they can do it. So we spend a short time saying if you have to address a short-term bump or you're looking for some quick wins and part of a change in management journey, here's the 2 or 3 places you should focus. And then more importantly, we looked at what's that 3-year journey that they have to be on or more. Lots of companies have made massive digital transformation investments. They've been doing that for the last 10 years. So most have governance around their data, most have the pieces in place. But if it's not all centralized, then it really starts to be more of a risk factor for the board, how that comes together. And so we spend time teaching them how to do that. So the expectations come a long way. They've all seen the McKinsey and the Bain and the other pieces that would say that's 2.6 to 4 million trillion opportunity for Gen I just right now with the existing companies, and they all want a piece of it. For most people, they're looking at a very small portion of that in the first 6 to 12 months. And really, it's really around customer benefit, cost effectiveness, higher productivity. It's not usually around a 5 or 10% lift in the first year. When you start getting to the second or third, then those dynamics start to change. And really, we'll talk about a little bit later on, I think, what has to be true for them to unlock that.
Do you want it back?
Okay, thank you. So if I'm just going to kind of quickly summarize kind of what I kind of took from that, probably just following from what you said, Peter, we're at the heart of expected inflations. Individual level, it's quite easy, but this is not really kind of translate to business potential. Expectations need to be based on the type of AI, which are a key factor of requirements in investment. Need to be able to clearly articulate the net value. Changing processes, upskilling people and talent is going to be key. Claudia talked about experimentation and really understanding the data set and being clear on the problem that you're trying to solve. Because many technologies just tend to, or companies tend to just jump straight into the technologies. You talked about managing stakeholder expectations and really to kind of set the expectation that this isn't going to happen very quickly. It's 3 to 5 years, but you've kind of got to have your plan. Perfect. Okay, thank you. So let's talk organizational readiness. Are some organizations more ready for AI than others? And if so, what would you say makes an organization AI ready? Peter, just because you're next to me, I'm going to start with you again. Sorry about that. It just helps to then pass it down. And I guess from Northell's perspective, do you perform any evaluation of AI readiness? Can you share some of your thoughts?
Yeah, we do. So I've done a bunch of research and run a few of these. So we've come up with a bit of a framework to kind of work out, where you need to make the improvements, generally speaking. I'll sort of just simplify that down to antecedents and moderators, so things that need to be true before you even start, because that's important to recognize, are you ready to start? And then once you start, the kind of things to look out for and make sure that it actually has effect. The biggest factor I see, and when you work with global companies, we see this a lot, where the regional differences highlight what actually makes it successful or not, is just executive sponsorship. So if you have an executive sponsor, it really helps you get through the tough times. It gets you the resources you need to get started, but it gives you that brand equity internally to kind of go through the tough times, because you will have failures and people will pay attention to those. So it's really helpful to have executive sponsorship. The other thing which is related to that, and for me that's probably more important to some extent, is having a clear strategy. If you understand what you're trying to achieve, is it improving the bottom line? Is it improving the top line? Is it growing your business with new revenue streams? Having a cohesive strategy really helps, especially in global companies, because what you find is in the markets, they then compete for resources. If you don't have a cohesive strategy, there's co-invention, there's redundancy, all these kind of things affect the rate at which you can change things. Those would be the key antecedents to look out for. The other thing which is obvious to most of us, because we're in this sort of area of expertise and everybody knows this field really well, is things are moving really, really fast. So things are evolving rapidly. And so decision-making becomes a key point. If you take weeks to make a decision that you can make in a day, you've lost weeks. And so effectively, being able to make really good decisions really fast based on data is really, really helpful. It doesn't have to be complex. It's just objectives and key results, that kind of metrics, that kind of works really simple. Is this thing helping me drive the outcome or not? Quickly make a decision, move on, and evaluate. And the priority is actually on selection. So selecting the right things is more important than analyzing them to death. And that's where you lose out to the competition. And then the other piece, and I think it's been mentioned around culture, and you've made shown some examples on that, which is learning and knowledge. So how quickly can you accumulate and learn from what you're doing and replicate that? Because for AI, there's only two things that matter. Do you have good data? Do you have proprietary data? And can you learn faster than everybody else? And if you can nail those things, you are going to outpace everybody else. And so there's a cultural dimension to that, which has got sub-elements. But fundamentally, if you're a learning organization and you can make good decisions, you can outpace everybody else.
Thank you, Peter. Derek, I'm going to ask you if that's okay, just to, I guess, again, consumer experience, global experience, do you have anything else you can add in terms of AI?
Sure. So it's unequal between organizations. Doesn't matter if you looked at, pick 5 airlines. They're all at different stages, all have different capabilities. Pick retailers here in the UK. They're all at different stages. So what you see, there's going to be an unequal benefit from AI in the short term. Some quick winners because their infrastructure is there, the governance is there to take advantage of it. There's the organizational will to do that. And they already have a lot of departments that have made a lot of investments. So in marketing technology, for example, there's big stacks they've built. They can get to the consumer pretty quickly. As long as they can automate some of those processes, as long as they can put it together, they can do well. I'll give you a quick example. Waitrose here in the UK. So they have used a company called Tastewise, which really helps them understand R&D, product development. So if you want to bring a new menu item to market, it takes about 12 to 14 months. It's very expensive if you get it wrong, because you've got a pipeline and a supply chain that has to be filled. Tastewise can go and look at everyone's social media feeds, aggregate it, bring it back, and spots trends. So if someone's taking pictures on Pinterest, and you don't have to go to many restaurants to see a lot of meals are photographed today, they can see what the trends are in advance. You can see what people are talking about. And people are very helpful because they use hashtags, right? Hashtag fried, hashtag barbecue, hashtag crispy, hashtag whatever they're using. So now you're already storing the data for you. So that allows people to go to market very quickly so they don't have to change their tech stack, but they're getting all this information on users. Map that back to what their consumer profile looks like, and what you want to do in the next 12 to 14 months becomes quite easy. You get to market faster, and instead of taking 12, you can probably do it in 6 to 8. But the more important thing is there's lots of risk with product development. If you can reduce that risk by 50%, if you can change that taste profile quicker, then that's where the upside is. So that helps the supply chain. That gives you a higher probability of success this is going to work in market. And those are easy wins, for example, what companies can do right now without having changed their tech stack. And then within the existing tech stack, there's lots of things that can be done with AI, just on the edge cases where you see quick wins. And I think that's where you're going to see a lot of this coming to market right now and in the next 6 months, because those are easy to do. It leverages the existing investments. It's relatively low risk because it's not talking direct to the consumer, for example. So they can get to market pretty quick.
Thank you. Okay, so just kind of quick summary from what I kind of heard from you guys. So key characteristics of AI readiness, having a clear framework to make improvements is really important. Things need to be true before you start. A very key aspect is executive sponsorship, which really supports the kind of brand equity. Having a clear and cohesive strategy, which I think is a given, but obviously a lot of companies just start without that. Decision-making becomes a key point, especially as things evolve very quickly, so having that ability to make decisions very quickly is very key. Basing this on data is really a good way to start. And selection is key in terms of that data that you kind of use. And I think the last bit was really around the culture, so this decision-making, learn fast, and everything else. So is there anything else anyone wants to add, or I'll move on to the next question? No? Okay, thank you. So this one's around getting started and prioritizing. So when it comes to an organization taking their first steps into their AI journey, what would you say are some critical things that need to be considered? How does an organization get started and prioritize? I think we'll start off with you, Oumar, if that's okay, because we haven't heard from you.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Yeah, I mean, on this, I think you can answer quite a lot of things in terms of what is critical before getting started. So, typically people will probably say you need, algo, AI model, data, which we've heard. But I think for me, if I have to single out one piece, I would say, which quite often gets overlooked, is the right culture. And by that, I mean, AI is highly disruptive, and we'll understand that. It requires not only developing new skill set, new competencies, but it also, for a lot of people, requires new business model. And that, I think, requires the right culture in the organization to be able to implement it, because there'll be failures along the way. And just when we start, when we have this conversation, even defining failure becomes a difficult topic. People or different organizations have different definitions for that concept. And I think it's really important before getting started with something that is non-deterministic, that is so early and fast-moving, as you said, Peter, it's important to think about that and agree and have a consensus around this. So what risk are we willing to take? What failures are we tolerating? And when I say that, I'm not just saying we can do a free-for-all. I'm not saying let's all go and buy Twitter for 50 billion, but we are willing to realize that we're doing something where there are a lot of risk, there are a lot of unknown, and we need to calibrate that. So I'm in the financial industry, and risk is what we do every day. But we take measured risk, risk that we think we understand, and there's always a part that we think is in the realm of probability. But we don't do that. The difficulty is not doing it without losing sight of accountability. So we want to make sure that when we do the post-mortem, once something has happened, we look at the decision, have we taken the right decision? If I decide to cross the road or the motorway blindfolded and I don't die, I'm not sure I did the right thing. Maybe the outcome is good, but the decision was wrong. So it's kind of within AI as a journey. Before starting, you need to grasp with all of these things, have the right culture. Can we all speak freely without, risk losing a job or risk any retaliation? And are we all willing to accept that along the way there'll be mistakes and failures, and we'll learn from them, and how much are we willing to tolerate? I think that to me is the critical part before getting started.
Thank you. Does anyone want to add something? Claudia, do you have?
If I could add about the ethics aspect of it, which is something that is very close to my heart, and I think normally we tend to only think about all of the ethics implications, either as a separate thing or at the end of the process when you're deploying your tech. And I think we need, as organizations, be incredibly responsible and insert the ethical considerations from the early stages. It should be part of the process. I'll give a very tangible example for us. So we really care about fairness. So that is a very driving value for any of our outputs, which in our case are narratives. And because of that, in every part of the discussion in our processes, we go, so how does that will play in terms of being fair at the end point? And by doing that, it becomes second nature to the entire process, into the entire group that is involved in that development. And I think it's quite important, and I think it's in the context of we running businesses, we should have a really careful thought. How does that play into all these values, such as transparency, fairness, human values, human-centric? Do we have a conscious and intentional decision and insert that through the process? Because that has been our experience. It becomes part of your process throughout. It becomes second nature. Everybody is railed around that objective, and is very important.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to, if you can hear me, but I'm going to leave it with you, Peter, because I think we talked a little bit about culture and ethics, but from your perspective, what do you think comes first, the technology or the strategy?
100% strategy. I mean, there's no question about that. And the other thing is, it's not just about strategy and a slide deck. It's actually going down into the nuts and bolts of it, understand what you're trying to improve, how you're going to measure it, and be clear about this. Because without that, there's no limiting factor to what you can do, because then everything becomes possible. It's almost like Alice in Wonderland. If you don't know where you're going, basically all journeys will get you there. And so that's a real challenge. And I think once you have a clear strategy, understand what you want to improve and how you're going to measure it, from that you can derive technology strategy. which also helps with cost. And cost is a key factor in these things. If you actually know what you're going to try and improve, when they are improved enough for you to stop working on it, it reduces the cost. If you haven't got that, then you find things like over-engineering, all technologies become relevant. You really don't have a selection framework when a vendor shows up and says, I have the latest AI tool, to understand what that means for you and whether you should be using it, how much you should be paying for it, and what the alternatives are. So I think that's a key part of it. And then just on technology strategy, simpler is always better. Like, there's no need to complicate these things. They may be complex, but I think we tend to overcomplicate them by adding more in than actually is needed. And that's also a challenge. So basically, once you have business strategy, clear objectives you can measure, linking that to a technology implementation, and we typically do things like blueprints and functional architectures to kind of bring that to life to show how that works. You are setting yourself up on a good journey for doing what is needed to be done and only doing enough. So there's this element of things are good enough. You don't have to go beyond that. And then you can iterate faster over that as well. So that's really critical in terms of investment and how you plan your strategy for where to spend the money and where to stop spending money. Because that's a challenge I see with portfolio management a lot. We don't switch the things off that don't work. And so that's a key part. If you can take that investment, pull it out and put it somewhere else and make that go faster, you're going to set yourself up for success. And that really requires a clear strategy connected to technology.
Thank you. Again, just to kind of summarize what I kind of took from that, I'll really say two things. The first one was really the people aspect. So in terms of getting started in prioritizing, people being the right culture. Obviously, AI is highly disruptive and will require new business models. So ensuring that kind of psychological safety is there, especially failures when things happen. You've got kind of a good plan in place to kind of support that. Also talking about clear understanding of accountability, kind of goes back to our discussion around decision making, which is really kind of important because that helps make quicker decisions. You talked a little bit about, well, you talked about ethics, which I think we touched quite a lot about yesterday, but obviously that's a very key point, both from an internal perspective and external, so that responsible AI, and fairness. And then the last piece you talked about, Peter, was around the business strategy, being 100% clear on what that is, what you're looking to improve, how you measure, and what that potential cost would be, and then you can determine the kind of technology that will support that. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to move on to challenges and barriers. And what are the typical challenges and barriers that an organization should expect in the early stages of their journey? I'm just going to ask you each just to give one example of a challenge or barrier. Happy for whoever wants to start first.
So I think one of a good challenge and a good barrier is the communication barrier. So sometimes you have a beautiful development, everybody involved knows it so well, you think it's amazing, you have something that is magic, and then you go show it and people are like, oh yeah, don't get it. So preparing your communication and over-communicating, especially when you're talking about a very transformative type of technology, which is what we're discussing here, is super key and super important. How do you communicate to the very different levels of your organization to be able to take your stakeholders along with you? And if you don't prepare that communication, you're likely to have unexpected problems that you probably did not need to. So I think communication is key, and I highly recommend.
Thank you. For us, I would say early challenges have been deciding where to focus initially, because there's so, with AI, you can implement it pretty much anywhere across the organization. So as the CEO, you've got to think about where is it that it will provide the highest value. And sometimes it's not the most obvious area. So for us, for example, I think what we wanted to do initially when we started thinking about it is trying to see if it can enhance our returns and make us invest smarter and better, and in a way maybe get the AI model to tell us where to invest, how to invest, and get a bigger return for that. In the end, where we ended up focusing was on funneling. So to give you a concrete example, we've got a current program where we're lending senior loans against UK commercial properties. And we look at about £1 billion worth of opportunities to spend about £50 million. So, and when I say $1 billion, it's probably across 50 to 60 transactions. So, and that is using my most expensive resources, which is my portfolio manager. So now, trying to improve the return on these loans is one thing, but being able to make that 1 billion funnel very quickly, 200 million by using AI, is saving a lot of resources. And all of a sudden, what I can do is instead of looking at 1 billion, I can look at 20 billion now, and then find even more. But that wasn't the obvious case for us. But we ended up focusing there because that's where the value was. And I think it goes to the point that Peter was mentioning earlier, is you need to look at what is the objective, have a strategy, really overarching. And as Claudia is saying, it involves everybody, because the biggest gain might be where in an area that is overlooked, maybe in legal or compliance or ops, and that's where you should focus first.
Sure. I'm going to say scale. It's so tempting with AI, and when we're talking about disruptive, just to get it out, get the maximum benefit to all your customers across as many business units as possible, because that'll be the easy way to realize value. The barrier of that is always the unknown. Murphy's Law comes into effect. Shit happens, right? And when it happens at scale, you're in trouble. So it's finding out what are the 2 or 3 smaller use cases, test cases that you can prove that work really well, get that in development, get it on a smaller scale, and then go fast. And it sounds simple, but the number of people who want to go to the very end because they've tested it quickly on 1 or 2 systems and now they should go, it causes a cascade effect of things they weren't expecting. And to bring that back, especially if that's touched a consumer or touched a supply chain or touched something of real important value. So for me, scale is the opportunity they're all chasing, but that barrier or the challenge they have to be careful is just how fast. And transformative change allows you to realize real potential, but it's taking that one step back with that strategy, just testing it 1 or 2 more times, and then go. The people I've seen follow that have done very well, and there's textbooks and papers full of all the people who have made some of the smaller decisions by going too far too fast, and that's that cautionary tale.
Do you want to share a challenge or barrier? Or?
No, I agree with all those. I think just in terms of change, you have to start at the end, the people you actually want the change to be adopted by, and work your way back from that. And I think you had a good point on communications. What I found quite helpful is just making it accessible, building prototypes, asking them what they think, getting feedback early, validate every single thing before you build, but start at the end. I think it's just a super quick way to get through the stuff and be more decisive in decision making. Especially in large companies, you find that a lot of the stuff happens in the center, but actually the innovation happens at the edge. And so when the stuff from the center hits the edge, it just doesn't work. And so that's where you get the adoption failures. You spend all that money, time, and effort. It just doesn't work. And so starting the other end back is probably a more intuitive way of doing it. It also has better feedback cycles in it.
Okay, thank you. I think that was quite clear, succinct, so I'm not going to really summarize that. I think the points were there. Just in terms of leadership and building consensus, again, I'm just going to open the floor to anyone who wants to kind of provide insights to this, but what are the key things for the leadership team, individually and collectively, that needs to be done to extract value?
I'll have a go. I'll start off. I think it's to my previous point as well, and the same applies when starting with the edge. When you're in the early stages of trying to put a program together, or at least show the potential, when you work with the leadership team, they probably are not as involved in the tech as you are, and you have to be able to kind of make it real for them. So what's in it for them, understand how that works. And oftentimes we just pick the most simplest use cases that they can understand the impact and be able to use that to help communicate and again, build prototypes. Just help them understand how the stuff is going to make a real difference and the real challenges of the business. I think starting there is quite helpful. What I see a lot of is people talk about the technology and how it's current and how it's new and how it's amazing. It doesn't matter unless it makes a difference for that person you're trying to sell this to. And if that person is making decisions, by the way, you are selling. So that's what you have to keep in mind. You're selling the concepts, and you have to make sure you communicate with them in a way they understand and they can make it real for them as a way to start. And I think that's a good way to get early momentum in these programs as well. To my earlier point around executive sponsorship, without that, it's going to hit some rough patches. And if you haven't got exec sponsorship to kind of get you through those tough times and keep momentum, the programs probably wouldn't realize the value. And I think that's a big challenge as well, is how do you make the investment actually get value in the end, so net realized value as opposed to value potential would be my sort of pointers.
Yeah, I think maybe the only point I will add is maybe the alignment of interests as well, because and especially in larger organizations, what we can see is verticals and different teams working sometimes even against each other, to be honest. So making sure as a leader that you're conveying a clear message, that you're getting a clear consensus, a clear buy-in, that everybody understands what are we trying to do, what are we getting out of it, and that we all agree that we're pushing in that same direction, so that you don't end up with the situation where this department is working for its own kind of a goal, which not necessarily is aligned with a different department. So I would echo that, and I would just add that, making sure that you build the consensus and get everybody aligned towards a single and clear objective.
Thank you. And I agree with all of these things wholeheartedly. The one thing I'd probably mention is whether it's the CDO, the CTO, the CIO, getting them together. Gen AI goes right across the horizontal, right? It goes right across all the stacks, all the business units. It touches all parts of the business. So when we talked about earlier, there are use cases, there are edge cases, there are different ways you can go slow, but you really need at the senior level a viewpoint of what's happening across all the business units. What is the true organizational value you want to get from this in the next 3 to 5 years and plan for that? Sounds simple, really hard to do. You look at a CDO, most CDOs don't last 18 months, right? Because there's so much friction between the organization of who owns the consumer, who owns the tech stack, who owns the execution, who's on the marketing. Those are things that have to be understood pretty quickly if you're going to go at scale with AI across a lot of your business. And that's really when we talk about the big transformative piece that's 2.6 to 4.6 million, depending on who you look. That's McKinsey's number. That's what's required to do that when you're talking enterprise level. And so figuring out those roles and how they work together is paramount, because those are the teams that unlock it. Those are the teams that are going to be in the trenches deploying it and dealing with the consumers both positively and negatively.
So we are in a news innovation lab, which is clearly a space where people expect innovation and experimentation, which is a very interesting space to be inside of an organization. But I think it goes back again to then, once you have the mandate, how do you go about exploring and communicating the value throughout and all the time? So I imagine that each organization, obviously I can only talk about mine, I cannot talk about others, but for us it's very important to be able to have that space where we can experiment, prototype, think of new ideas, imagine how would it be if you could do X, Y, and Z, is there a solution for that? Put in the knowledge experts about the subject matter experts, which is something incredibly important as well, and marry that with the technology. So obviously that comes from having an incredible backing, and the solutions that you can create from having that are outstanding. So I think it's a great way if people can do that.
Thank you. So kind of what I took away from that, so I think I kind of put it down to demystifying AI for the leadership. So, and putting it in language that makes sense to them, kind of giving them that aha moment that kind of helps them understand how this fits in with their business strategy and the potential of AI. So that's pretty key. I think I also heard getting behind at least a single objective, so everyone's behind the same kind of cause. True operational value comes from the leadership really having a good understanding across the organization where they can kind of interject kind of opportunities, clarity on that value creation from the offset. And I think, as you said, Claudia, last points were that continuous experimentation is key. Okay. So I think you'll be glad to hear that this is the final question that I have for you. So I guess just in 30 seconds or so, kind of thinking about the summary of the kind of themes you talked about, organizational readiness, setting expectations, challenges, everything else. What would be your one bit of advice to our audience here for them to go back and kind of share with their organizations not currently using enterprise AI, how to kind of get started? So I'm going to start with you, Derek, and the way the microphone will come back to me at the end.
Thank you. Where I would start, if I was an enterprise, I'd pick 1 or 2 business units. So at the senior level, pick 1 or 2 business units where we thought there were use cases that made a lot of sense, tightly defined, that are either in marketing, direct customer service, so call centers, either personalization, pricing, or market assortment if you're a retailer. Those are the areas where I would first focus. Some very specific use cases around, because you think you could unlock some significant growth. You could get a lot of cost efficiencies or productivity enhancements. And the other piece I would be looking at is be very clear what you want your outcomes to be. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 3 or 4% lift in profit or margin. It could simply be, here's the productivity increase we're going to get, here's the cost savings we're going to get so we can reinvest. But be very clear on what those success metrics are for those use cases, or quick ways to deploy. And the reasons I pointed out those areas, and almost all organizations, they've already made those investments in the tech stack. They've already made those investments in the analytics that are behind that data infrastructure. So actually starting there is quite easy. And they already have very capable managers generally, so upskilling the talent doesn't take much time. So that's the quickest path to value for a lot of places.
Thank you. On my side, I would say I would start by looking at identify where we can find value. So I will look across the organization, and as I said earlier, it's not necessarily in the most obvious place. So I would be willing to take a look and say, with AI, we know that AI is a prediction machine. So where are we using predictions in our day-to-day business? Look everywhere and see where you can get the biggest gain. And the second point I would say is going back again on what I said earlier about the culture, is really questioning whether we do, at the leadership level, do we have the right culture in-house to implement such a disruptive innovation as AI? Because algo you can get, technology, data you can get. I think culture is very difficult to change. So if you don't have the right culture, you might as well have the right technology. I wouldn't bet in favor of that. So we make sure that we ask the right question, and if we don't, we just need to do the hard work to make sure that we foster the right culture. We enable everyone to be able to contribute and to work in the right direction.
So I'm going to add a few practical considerations to it. I think, first of all, as I said in the beginning, or we all discussed, what's your problem? Think of your problem, understand your problem, understand what is the matching solution or technique that you need to use to apply. Is it straight rules-based automation? Is it a machine learning? Is it large language model? Where in between, or the combination of the several technologies. Have a communication plan. One thing that we didn't mention here, which I think is super important, start with documentation from the onset, because documentation is a huge deal once you have to go back. No one wants to do it after the fact. But document everything, the decision, the test, the result, why you went back. Because in a year from now, 2 years from now, you're going to need that piece of documentation. And if you don't have it because we were just busy doing stuff, you will regret that. And so documentation is really important. So make all of these intentional as part of decision making. Obviously get the ethics bit, which is close to my heart, and I'll insist again because it's very easy to forget. And then, but there are consequences. So if you wave that in from the beginning as part of your culture, as part of how you go about, it becomes then a flow, and that's the flow of innovation that you want to get, a flow that is ready for the future, and really prepare for that future-proof development that you want to get. And don't be afraid of go back and iterate if you realize that your original idea needs adjustment. It's very important. Just like figure it out, understand, test it, document, and move forward, but in a very clear, with measured risk, because then you can have really great developments at your hand.
I'll build on the iterate fast. I say, generally speaking, validate before you build. Before you build anything, validate get some feedback, go out of the office, go and speak to real customers. That's really important, get that feedback going. The other important point is understand who your stakeholders actually are. I think it's easy to optimize the ones that you think is going to get value from it, but have a think about the ones that maybe you are negatively impacting, because they are the ones who will stop the change from happening. So be very cognizant of who your stakeholders are and keep the feedback cycles. Feedback early and often is really valuable. The reason I mention that is because I believe in a learning organization, so making people learn faster, having the organization learn these lessons and actually embedding it. And if you haven't got feedback, you can't learn. It's as simple as that. If there's no feedback, then it's basically an echo chamber. So having that focus on outcomes, get the feedback early and get the feedback loops into the learning cycle is going to be really beneficial. And the better you do that, you have a much, much better chance of outpacing everybody else. So that would be my sort of key elements that I would layer on top of what's already been said.
Thanks, Peter. So I guess just a summary of kind of things that I've heard and I've jotted down. So I think we all agree that this is the time for technological disruption and rethinking your business model. Value creation is key, I think, is one of the things that I've taken away from this. Think less point solutions in isolation, but more along the lines of use cases that support a more system solution. Human augmentation, human assistance as part of your solution is always going to be a good way to start. Build the right ecosystem with the right partners from the offset. In terms of the culture, the kind of upskilling and reskilling, I think Nigel Toon talked about it yesterday with the 3 Cs, rethinking that whole space. Building confidence and trust in whatever you put out there, both internally and externally. Ensure access for all. And I think documentation, as you said, Claudia, is kind of key, and don't be afraid to start. So on that end, I'm going to end. I think we have some time for questions. Do we have? Perfect. So we have the first person here who'd like to ask a question. I'm going to just allow anyone to kind of put their hand up if they want to answer.
Hi, this is about documentation. Right, so we mentioned about it, right? So in organizations where fast to market is key, yes, they want to be there yesterday. And at the same time, they're agile, they're nimble, and everything else to go with it. There may not necessarily be as much time because there's a lot of socialization required and crystallization of the thoughts and everything else to put it to paper. How or what would be an alternative to yet have crystallization of the process, but still be nimble to market and achieve both of them together?
It is hard, it's true, but it's about how you prioritize what's important. And you have to prioritize and make it a value of your development process. And you have to require that of your product managers, product owners, and just say, we need this. And people do resist because you are busy doing the fun stuff. But then you need it. And then whenever you need it, you just really will be very happy that you enforce the need for documentation. If you think of the time spent throughout the whole chain, just build into it the moments and the parts of the steps that you would require for your organization to make sure you have the documentation and checkpoints. So if you make it part of it, it happens. It has to be intentional though, because it's not fun.
I can build in documentation because it's the first thing that doesn't get done. And the second thing is testing. So those are the key things. I think if you work from a solid foundation, that helps. If you have tools in place, automation, the documentation should take care of itself. And there's lots of things we do technically to make that super simple. The other thing is around, can you go back a step? So if you fail, can you go back a step? That's all process tools that make that possible. And so when I said simple architectures, one of it is actually, do you have those things in place? So a lot of points were made around starting too early, getting out real quick. But if the foundation isn't there to back it up, that's where you get the challenges. So it's less about manually writing documents, but having processes to generate those for you, to get the understanding, to get the rollbacks, things like data lineage, what version of the data set did I use to train this model, what version of the code. Those are all really practical things. They can be automated, but they have to be thought of at the outset.
This gentleman here, if that's okay, and then the next gentleman there.
Yeah, much of what I was hearing here seems to me to be characteristic of any software project. Things like providing good documentation, having a strategy, having executive buy-in, and things like that. Can you point to things that are specifically unusual about doing AI projects?
So I think to simplify it, and I'll sort of tongue-in-cheek say that the LLMs, which is kind of what people think about generative generally, or the Dallis of the world, they are stochastic machines. They don't produce the same outcome time and time again. You put the same prompt in twice, you get different answers. And so validating that becomes the key challenge, because you can't write a unit test for that. You have to have different mechanisms in place to test that. And so there's an element of proceeding really carefully about the impact that those tools might have. The difference is, I think if you write software projects, applications, you kind of very clearly know who the audience is, what the inputs and outputs are. There's more determinism involved in that kind of process, whereas with this, actually the impact is disproportionate. And so when you have critical outcomes, so financials is a good example, you give someone bad advice, the implications of that is significant. You have to have a whole different set of challenges or a whole set of different validation processes built into that. And so you end up with a different set of tools to kind of make that happen. So I think for me, the one thing that's very different at a sort of engineering level is these things are non-deterministic. They will give you different answers. And so the more you can narrow that down and you can be specialist in how you put data into the systems and what actually represents ground truth, those things make a difference. So there's engineering things that mitigate against that. I think at the sort of organizational level and just generally the things we experience is it moves so fast. So that's another challenge. You don't really have time to go through and analyze things in depth. You have to make good decisions really quickly with a very limited set of data. So that's another challenge. So that's the automation. And you're right to point out that these are just typical software engineering things, but it's the pace at which you have to do them that changes. And if you haven't got those foundations in place, then you can't do it at pace. And you are definitely going to fail at some point, and you can't go back on it. So those are the sort of things that change. But fundamentally, it is software engineering. But it's the fact that you combine data, models, and code, and they all work on different cycles that create the complexity. And we do that at pace. And so having foundations really become critical.
Does anyone else have anything to add?
Just a 2-second addition to that. I think everything about AI is normally related to scalability and speed. So speed of development, or you accelerate processes. And that is obviously still software development from A to B, but you have to be mindful of the consequences and the impact that will have in your outcome. So I think that changes the process slightly and amplifies the needs for some of these points that, you're right, is always very necessary for any software development.
Thank you. And I probably will just add one other piece to that, because it's a thing that we talk a lot about, which is I think the methodology isn't different to typical digital transformations, but the opportunity with AI is pretty vast, and the implications of it can also be quite impactful. So when you're kind of looking at how you build AI implementation or solutions into your business, you've got to think about the longer term effects, right? What is going to happen? The opportunities that you can derive from that are going to be quite big. The culture of the people, right? They're already worried about what AI can do. You've got to kind of think about all of those things, before you start. So I think that this discussion about this AI ecosystem, culture, building the right partners, thinking more longer term, how is it going to really change your business model? This is not about typical put in a point solution and then move to the next one. You have a great opportunity to do bigger things. So yes, the core kind of building those typical transformation projects is the same, but how you think about it long term, I think, is going to be quite key. So we have this gentleman here who'd like to ask a question.
Thanks, everyone. So perhaps a question to you, Derek. As a consultancy firm, do you hear senior leaders often saying, well, we're going to wait because the speed of change is so fast, we don't want to build something today that will quickly become out of date? Certainly something that we hear a lot. And as a follow-up to that, we hear as well the idea that, well, maybe this will be a product soon that will just be available off the shelf, so we don't want to go and invest loads of time and effort into building our own version of this when actually Microsoft might release the product tomorrow. So how do you manage that as a consultancy?
Great question. So part of that comes down to organizational readiness and what's their data literacy and what's their capabilities. So that'd be the core. But you put an interesting point. It's for a lot of people starting out, bringing in an outside partner is the fastest way. So we used Waitrose and Tastewise. Real easy way. They don't have to go and reinvent the wheel and spend all the time building something. You can bring a partner in who's using AI tools to enhance your current process. Those are easy edge cases where they can start getting benefit. You're not disrupting how you go to market. You're not changing internally a lot of things you're doing. You're just getting the instant benefit of that. Second piece, depending on the size enterprise, there's usually a build-buy mentality. In a lot of places, they want to build things. That's where you get a little bit dangerous because the time iteration cycle. Sometimes you're better to buy some of these and come off. They're not that expensive right now. Most Gen AI off the shelf is not that expensive. You're better in some cases to start using outside, test it, see how it works, decide what's the things you want to own inside and what are the investments you want to make. It's the quickest way to market and the quickest way to value. Part of finding the right partner doing that is they should have a lot of the governance, documentation, and the things already done for you. So you're really just looking at how does this insert in my process, which is faster to market and usually less disruptive. I'm not advocating that this is the only way you should do it, but it's the easier way to start in your example.
It's my critical side because I actually used to work for Microsoft. So you have to also look at technologies like Microsoft and understand what they're trying to achieve with their technology stack. So a really good example is the image recognition, right? So you give it a video and you say, who's in this video? They might be able to say it's Leonardo DiCaprio, which is helpful to some extent. But if you're a business and marketing operations who have to pay Leonardo DiCaprio royalties for using him in specific markets and your rights have expired, those tools can't do that. So you have to integrate that with other systems and you have to ask those kind of questions. It's really important to understand your use cases and actually figure out what you're trying to achieve because it might functionally do the thing, but can you change the process by using it, by complementing it with your data sets? So you need to understand how they think about the problem and actually does that help you achieve your goals? And sometimes it's not as simple as they have the tech, it's can it work in my stack with all the other things that I need to achieve to change the overall processes.
Thank you. Are we at time? Okay. So thanks very much, everyone, and thank you to our panelists today.